I had been secretly in love with Jacob for 3 years when his younger brother fell for me. So, the once rebellious young master dyed his hair black. He quit smoking, gave up extreme sports, and simply followed behind me every day, sweetly calling me cutie. Everyone could tell he liked me, including Jacob, so he handed me a card. It's good that he's finally showing some ambition. Just humor him a little. In that instant, I felt completely disheartened. Later, Jacob got drunk and acted spoiled, saying his stomach hurt. But then he heard the sticky, wet sounds. He demanded to know who I was with. My breath faltered, and I laughed lightly, humoring your little brother. Chapter 1. This was the third time today Fernando had brought documents over to me. I lowered my gaze, trying my best not to meet his burning eyes. Out of professionalism, I taught him bit by bit. When I finished explaining, a cup of warm brown sugar water was handed to me. Fernando smiled so sweetly, his tiger teeth carrying a wild edge. Cutie, are you thirsty? The teasing gazes of our colleagues pinned us down. My face grew a little hot, and I felt a stir in my heart. I didn't know how he figured out I was on my period. I laughed and teased him back. So attentive, then did you actually understand everything I just taught you? Fernando raised an eyebrow, confident and at ease. He braced a hand on the desk, leaning in to cage me in his arms. His chest only brushed lightly against the chair back, keeping the perfect sense of boundaries. I didn't know what cologne he used, but it wrapped around me like sunlight, warm and glowing. I was a little dazed, until he cockily opened his mouth. All done. Impressive, right? Only then did I snap back to reality. Feigning calm, I checked his work, and sure enough, everything was correct. Fernando looked at me with anticipation, waiting for praise. I dodged his gaze a little, giving a dry response. You learn very quickly. When Fernando left with disappointment in his eyes, Lily, who was close to me, couldn't help but come over. No way. MS. Bianca, you really can't tell that he likes you? Honestly, I think now that you've made a career for yourself, you should give some attention to other things. Fernando's not bad at all. He's the perfect example of a little wolf dog type, obedient off the bed, wild on the bed. When I first met him, he had lip piercings, eyebrow piercings, and more studs in his ears than I have moles on my face. For you, he's behaved himself like a good boy for 3 whole months. Seeing me a little absent-minded, she grew more forceful, as if hating iron for not becoming steel. Besides, I heard he's clean living. He's also the boss's younger brother. No pressure there. And just from trust funds he gets millions every month. Plus, he's smart and romantic. She rambled on and on. I knew she meant well, but what she didn't know was that my refusal to accept Fernando wasn't because he wasn't good enough. It was because I already had someone in my heart. Chapter 2. As usual, after delivering Jacob his coffee, I was just about to leave when he called me back. In my mind, I quickly went through everything. I confirmed over and over that there wasn't anything that required a one-on-one discussion with me, and only then dared to feel a little expectation. If it wasn't business, then what could it be? Jacob lifted his eyes to look at me. Did Fernando bother you again today? So it turned out he just wanted to ask about his brother's situation. I pressed down the disappointment in my heart and dutifully reported. No, he only asked me a couple of questions. Unexpectedly, Jacob let out a mocking laugh. 3 months into the job and he still has endless questions, then what was the point of his Imperial College degree? Of course, Fernando wasn't stupid. On the contrary, he was smart, sweet, and considerate. When he asked me questions, he always picked the moments when I wasn't in the best state. Answering a few simple problems didn't count as slacking off at work, and it even rescued me from heavy tasks, giving me a chance to breathe. Not to mention, with his constant feeding of small comforts, my condition had improved a lot these past weeks. But anyone could see that he was pursuing me this way. My gaze flickered. I didn't want to discuss this topic with Jacob. Being liked by the younger brother of my secret crush didn't exactly make me happy. But Jacob clearly didn't see it that way. His tone slow and steady. He was born with emotional and pain insensitivity, so he likes chasing thrills. While abroad, he loved extreme sports, racing, skydiving, and ended up in the ICU several times. Our parents and I As his older brother, we're always very worried about him. Chapter 3. Jacob wasn't much of a talker, but hearing him say so much today didn't make me happy. When I first became his secretary, many people praised me for being quick-witted, for being able to understand without things needing to be spelled out. Now, I wished I were a little slower. That way my heart wouldn't sink so heavily, and I wouldn't be struggling to hold back tears. All I could do was blurt out in a loss of composure, "Sorry. I still have urgent matters to handle. You can find someone else to confide in." I wanted to flee in embarrassment, but Jacob's next words nailed me to the spot. "I want you to do me a favor, as a friend, Bianca." Not as his secretary, but as Bianca, the same Bianca who had been with him from campus into the workplace. Just like back then, when he entered the company under pressure, everyone around only called him young CEO, with disdain, with condescension. They attributed all his success to his father's support. And that was when he would also call out to me, "Bianca, they're all bullying me. Can you come keep me company?" But I would rather he didn't play that emotional card with me. He shouldn't trample on my love like that, and he shouldn't so easily push me toward someone else. Perhaps because I was utterly disappointed, I actually managed to calm down, calmly, like a truly submissive subordinate. "President Jacob, go ahead." Jacob frowned slightly, displeased by the title, but he quickly reined in his emotions. After so many years in a high position, he was long used to keeping personal feelings out of decisions. He handed me a card. "Fernando rarely shows such ambition. Bianca, could you humor him? This is the reward." He even wanted to add, "You don't need to actually accept his confession. Just keep him hooked." "All right." Before he could finish, I cut him off. I ignored the astonishment in Jacob's eyes, just like back in school when I had agreed to him so decisively. Chapter 4. All the way until getting off work, I was listless. When Fernando stopped me, I even felt a little annoyed. My tone came out harsh. "Don't you have anything else to do?" But Fernando had a thick skin, not the least bit discouraged. "I do. For example, right now I want to go see the sea. Are you coming?" It felt so random. My anger hit a soft wall. I cooled down a little and couldn't help asking why. Fernando raised an eyebrow and countered, "If you won't tell me why you're upset, then why should I tell you why I want to see the sea?" I rolled my eyes. "Oh, then I have no reason to go with you either." Strangely, I could always be more relaxed, more myself, around Fernando. Maybe that's the strength of not liking someone, and it also meant the version of me that Fernando liked was the most genuine one. After a brief staring contest, Fernando gave in first. He raised his hand in mock surrender. "All right, I give up." "Then smile for me and I'll tell you." His gaze was indulgent, almost doting. Fernando really was handsome, like the kind of boy next door people dream about, mischievous yet irresistibly charming. My cheeks grew a little hot. I deliberately forced a half smile, neither real nor fake. "Well, are you going to say it? If not, I'm leaving." After speaking, I made a show of turning to go. Sure enough, after only 2 steps, my wrist was caught. Fernando's tone was perfectly matter-of-fact. "Why should you need a reason to see the sea? If you want to go, you just go." Chapter 5. With Fernando's jacket draped over my shoulders and a warming patch he'd somehow prepared stuck to my stomach, Jacob was a workaholic. After becoming his personal secretary, I kept pace with him. Most of the time, we were the last ones to leave the company. But now, my task had shifted to Fernando. Today was my first time getting off work this early, and also my first time driving to chase the sunset. We parked by the seaside. I looked out at the vast horizon, listening to the sound of the waves. My heart suddenly grew quiet. I didn't even notice when Fernando came closer, his hand brushing my face. Only when warm fingers wiped away the dampness of my tears did I realize I had been crying. I waited for Fernando to pester me like a curious child, asking questions. Part of me felt reckless, ready to tell him everything, but instead, out of nowhere, he pulled out a bottle of red wine and 2 glasses. He winked at me. I asked a doctor, drinking a little helps the circulation. So full of himself, I couldn't help but laugh. "You really are the most attentive." We drank red wine, watching the last sliver of sunlight sink beneath the sea. and it felt like there was nothing in the world that couldn't be solved. The night would come, and then it would brighten again. I turned my head to look at Fernando. From the first time I met him, I had always thought his nose resembled Jacob's, and his thin lips carried the same coldness as Jacob's. But now I noticed his eyes were bigger than Jacob's. On his lip was a faint little mole that disappeared whenever he smiled. A few freckles scattered lightly across his face, adorably so. Completely different from Jacob. I couldn't stop myself from reaching out to touch his scarred ears. Fernando was sensitive, his neck and face flushed red. But still, he obediently lowered his head, making it easier for me, like a small animal exposing its soft belly. He explained, "They look scary, but they don't hurt at all. The doctor said my body heals well, even getting so many piercings at once. None got infected." I said nothing, didn't respond, until he grew restless, turning his head to look at me, uncertain. His eyelashes were long, his eyes like those of a fawn. Suddenly, I couldn't help but laugh. "Fernando, why don't you try chasing me?" Chapter 6. After blurting out those words on impulse, I regretted it a little. Deep inside, I blamed myself. Even if I wanted to walk out of the pain of heartbreak, I shouldn't have used Fernando. I could tell, he truly liked me. With that guilt, I didn't have the heart to reject Fernando's request to come over to my place for a meal. We went to the supermarket together and bought some meat and vegetables. I stood in the kitchen cooking noodles. Fernando couldn't help much, so he squatted at the kitchen door with my golden retriever, whispering, "Mom really knows how to cook noodles? Woof woof. Have you ever tried them?" I rolled my eyes. "Stop barking like a dog. Go sit on the couch and play," scolded. Fernando scrunched up his nose awkwardly and obediently walked away. I found it a little funny and completely relaxed. Unexpectedly, not even half a minute later, Fernando appeared again. This time, he had an excuse. His tone smug. "Your phone is ringing. Busy with the noodles." I gestured for Fernando to answer on speaker, but I didn't expect it to be Jacob. His voice sounded weary. "Bianca, do you have the latest proposal for the bid? Please send it to me," he probably thought. As usual, I was still at the office, keeping him company while he worked overtime. My emotions were tangled, and for a moment I didn't know what to say. But Fernando spoke up, displeased. "Man, it's after hours and you're still making her run back to the office to deliver files? You're like some extinct exploitative capitalist." Silence filled the air. After a while, Jacob finally spoke, his voice heavy. "You're at her place?" Chapter 7. I took the phone and motioned for Fernando to bring the noodles. Avoiding his question, I replied formally, "The proposal file is on my computer desktop. If you're in a rush, you can copy it yourself." On the other end, Jacob's voice sounded dry. "This late, you let him stay at your place? Don't you realize he likes you?" I lost focus for a moment, watching Fernando foolishly carry the tray barehanded. He walked slowly, even had the leisure to tease the dog, as if he wasn't afraid of being burned at all. My brows twitched. I put the phone down and quickly took the tray from him. Sure enough, his palm was red. I hurriedly pulled him to rinse it with water, not even paying attention to what Jacob was saying. Instead, Fernando raised his voice like a silly sweetheart. "Of course Cutie knows. She even agreed to let me pursue her today." The sound of running water swallowed Jacob's reply. I glared at Fernando, a little angry. "Young master, can't even carry a tray properly, are you a child?" Fernando grumbled twice, like a puppy playing with its owner. He even seemed to enjoy it, his tone careless. "I carried it like that on purpose. Honestly, it doesn't even hurt." I froze, remembering his pain insensitivity, and only then did I realize how terrifying this illness was. If you can't feel pain, you naturally lose the ability to escape danger, and in the end, you could be hurt without even knowing it. Seeing my mood shift, Fernando changed the subject, cheekily. "Well, okay, it's not completely painless, but I do need Cutie to blow on it for me." Chapter 8. In the end, I didn't blow on it. Fernando sat aggrievedly on the floor, holding the dog food I had prepared for Woof Woof. His palm was being licked over and over again by the puppy's saliva. I sat on the sofa and met his resentful gaze. It was a little funny. so I gently nudged his side with my foot. Does it still hurt? Fernando still had a bit of cleanliness obsession. His voice was muffled. Unhappy. It doesn't hurt anymore. Only then did I squat down and pat Woof Woof on the head. Go eat your food. Good dog. Woof Woof wagged its tail furiously and went to find its real food bowl. I turned my head, a little surprised as I looked at Fernando. Not going to wash your hands? His bright eyes held a trace of grievance. Am I being disobedient? I thought for a moment. Hesitantly, I nodded. Fernando looked even more aggrieved and questioned in a loud voice. Then why didn't I get a reward? For a second, I didn't follow. I looked at Woof Woof, then at him. It seemed absurd. What? You've got your eye on Woof Woof's dog food? Fernando ground his teeth. Who wants to eat its food? You just didn't pat my head, Bianca. You're playing favorites. He pounced on me, startled. I fell back onto the carpet. I was afraid he'd get mad and smear Woof Woof's drool all over my face with his hands. Instead, Fernando propped himself on his elbows, leaned down proactively, and pressed his head under my chin. In a muffled voice, he ordered, "Pat me." I obeyed and gave his head a pat. His curly hair was soft, pleasant to the touch. Fernando's ears turned red, but he refused to lift his head, so I couldn't see his expression. I could only hear him pushing further. I played with Woof Woof for a long time. Was this him asking for a reward? I didn't understand, so I followed the same routine I usually had with Woof Woof, a pat as a reward. My hand hurts from carrying dishes. And you're still bullying me. This time I understood, it was grievance. Another pat. Fernando tasted the sweetness of it and even started asking for rewards in advance. When I leave later, I'll take out the trash. The kitchen's trash. The bathrooms too. I'll even wash the dishes and mop the floor. This time, I didn't respond. Unhappy, he rubbed his head against my chin, and I, turning my head, caught sight of Jacob, standing silently at the door. I didn't know when he had appeared. Chapter 9. This was the second time Jacob had come to my house since I bought it. The only pair of men's guest slippers was being worn by Fernando, and I had no intention of inviting Jacob in. I patted Fernando. Stop messing around. Your brother came to pick you up. Face to face. The two brothers weren't close at all. Fernando reluctantly stood next to Jacob. Man, don't you know any boundaries? Dropping by after work like this, trying to scare people to death? Jacob ignored him, crouched down, and reached to pet Woof Woof. Woof Woof, do you still recognize me? But the golden retriever was stubbornly rubbing against Fernando. Jacob's hand fell empty, and he looked at me with a hint of confusion, as if he couldn't understand. When we first adopted Woof Woof together, the dog used to lick his hand with affection. How had it changed now? But my attention wasn't on him at all. I tossed the oversized coat I had bought earlier to Fernando, reminding him, return your own coat after it's washed. Wear this one for now. At least you can still feel the cold. Can't you, young master? Fernando obediently put on the coat. It was still a little small on him. He wore it sloppily, the collar not even turned properly. I couldn't stand it, so I stood on tiptoe to fix it for him. Fernando bent down obediently, lowering his head. Almost instinctively, I ruffled his hair again. Good boy. Then I turned, only to meet Jacob's pale face. He said my name in a dazed voice. Bianca. He stopped, waiting for me to guess what he wanted to say. Unfortunately, I had no patience for guessing anymore. I forced a fake smile, my tone perfunctory. Sorry. Did you just say something? Jacob's face grew even paler. Chapter 10. In the car, Fernando took off the coat and inhaled deeply. His cheeks were slightly red, like a puppy that loved its owner's scent. Jacob only felt disgusted watching him and said coldly, "What? Addicted to pretending to be a dog now?" Fernando still smiled, looking as if he had a very good temper. "Aw, brother, are you angry because you wanted to be the dog but couldn't? So now you're taking it out on me? At worst, I can find you a master. In that circle, there should always be someone blind enough to like your boring, pretentious old man act, right? Fernando, do you think if she knew your true nature, she'd still treat you the way she does now? What's the point of a monster with emotional deficiency pretending to be obedient?" Fernando's smile vanished completely, expressionless. His face turned dark and sharp. What's wrong? You tried to push Cutie into confessing. But in the end, she didn't want you. And instead she chose to comfort me. Did that break your defenses? Jacob's hand gripped his neck tightly. Shut up. If it weren't for you deceiving me, how could I have ever? Fernando couldn't feel pain, nor any sense of danger. Did I force you? I just traded you a port project. Now that the project is in your hands, suddenly it becomes me deceiving you? After confirming that the marks on his neck wouldn't fade by tomorrow, Fernando finally punched him hard in the stomach. Looking down at him struggling in pain, he sneered, "At the end of the day, it's just that you're too arrogant. Always being chosen so firmly made you forget to cherish it. You've been given too much love, so you've forgotten how precious love really is. You've been spoiled, Jacob. That's why, even knowing she'd be hurt, you were still willing to gamble with me. Because you're greedy, you want both. But I'm different. I only want Cutie." Chapter 11. The next day, I didn't see Fernando at the office. Worried, I went to the break room to call him. It took a long while before he finally answered. Fernando's voice was hoarse, almost like he was acting spoiled. "Cutie." The moment I heard it, I knew something was wrong. Frowning, I asked, "Did you wear the coat properly yesterday?" Fernando hesitated and stammered, until I raised my tone. "Tell the truth." He finally admitted honestly, "I did wear it, but my brother and I got into a fight on the way. The place was kind of remote, so I waited a long time for a ride." After speaking, he broke into a fierce cough. I pressed on, "Did you take your medicine?" Again, silence. Annoyed, I left him with one sentence. "Wait for me, young master." When I returned to the office, I saw flowers on my desk. Lily teased with a mocking smile, "No wonder you turned down the little wolf dog. Turns out our boss has someone in her heart." Well, at least he matches our Bianca the Great Beauty. I felt irritated. I didn't know what Jacob was trying to achieve by this. Back when I had a crush on him, I never told anyone, because I valued this job. I valued my future. But now, he had made it so public that everyone knew. People who didn't know the truth even whispered behind my back that I was pretending to be aloof. I handed the flowers to Lily. "Throw them away for me. I'll bring you dessert from your favorite shop later. And also, please tell them I already have a boyfriend. It's not him." Lily's face lit up with gossip-fueled excitement. "Consider it done, Commander." I breathed a sigh of relief. With keys in hand, I went downstairs. Now that I think about it, I almost have to thank Jacob for asking me to take care of Fernando. This way, I didn't even need to take time off. Chapter 12. I hadn't expected it. When I opened the door, Fernando gave me quite the surprise. A loose towel barely hanging around his waist. The room temperature so low it was alarming. His expression was weak, lips pale from fever. He pleaded pitifully for comfort. "Cutie, I'm so hot." I suddenly felt thankful I came. Otherwise, Fernando would probably have ended up hospitalized for days with a fever like this. I raised the room temperature, then wrapped Fernando up tightly in a quilt like a rice dumpling before I finally breathed a sigh of relief. On his forehead was a cooling patch, and he held the thermometer stiffly between his lips. Looking at me, he pouted. "Hot, uncomfortable. I want to take a shower." A vein pulsed on my forehead. I glanced at the thermometer, 39.5 degrees Celsius. I even suspected he had brought this on himself, because without pain perception, he only felt heat and weakness, so he kept showering, making it worse, not to mention setting the air conditioning so low. The more I thought, the angrier I got. I roughly ruffled his curls. "You're so good at taking care of others. How did you manage to make such a mess of yourself?" He refused to go to the hospital no matter what. After much coaxing, I managed to get Fernando to take his medicine. Then he sat pitifully on the far end of the sofa. I couldn't help laughing and tried to pinch his face. He blocked me, grumbling, "Low immunity during this time, you'll catch it from me." And he even looked wronged. I paused for a moment. "Oh, do you have a heating pad?" "I think my stomach hurts a little." I lied. I only hurt during the first 2 days. Today was the third. But Fernando believed me. He shot up instantly. "It's in the car. I'll go get it." "No need." I saw one here at your place. He hadn't even processed my words until I slowly approached him, pressing his burning forehead through the quilt against my lower belly. His whole body froze. My fingertips touched his temple, gently massaging. Close your eyes. Sleep a while. You'll feel better. Be good. Chapter 13. I don't know what switch flipped in Fernando that day. Now, when he wants a reward, he doesn't like being patted on the head anymore. Instead, he kneels on the floor, pressing his forehead against my stomach. When Lily heard this, her laughter was a bit terrifying. Coo, that's a mother. That's a wife. Instinctively, I wanted to clarify that Fernando and I hadn't reached that point. But remembering how I had once used him as a shield, I shut my mouth sullenly. Because of that, I still owed Fernando a wish. These days, he had gotten used to freeloading in my kitchen. Why not freeloading food? Because he was the one cooking. Near the end of the workday, Fernando sent me 2 quick messages. Cutie, how about sweet and sour ribs, shrimp with vermicelli, and a little green veggie tonight? A sticker of a good puppy wagging its tail. All my favorites. Unfortunately, I could only tearfully refuse. I've got a class reunion tonight. Don't wait for me. Before I could type anything else, Jacob was already at my desk. There was a trace of hope in his eyes. Bianca, I'll drive. Shall we go together? My gaze turned cold. No need. People might misunderstand. As I was about to brush past, he grabbed my wrist. Do you really have to be this cruel to me? This time, it was my turn to be confused. I even wondered if there was something wrong with his head. We had never even started anything. I had only stepped back into my role as secretary. Where exactly was the cruelty? But then I remembered the generous salary he gave me, and that bank card with a pleasant amount, enough to cover my emotional damages. I held back, with a professional fake smile. I looked at him. Jacob, we're only superior and subordinate. I don't understand what you're saying. But inwardly, I was already considering whether I should switch jobs. Chapter 14. Traffic was heavy. Jacob and I arrived late. Only 2 seats remained, right next to each other. It was just a meal, so I didn't make a fuss and sat down. But I didn't know what Jacob was imagining. His eyes lit up. I ignored him, only secretly criticizing how these dishes weren't as tasty as Fernando's. No surprise there, he really did have skills worthy of a returned overseas student. Once everyone had arrived, the small talk began. That's when I learned that the class monitor and the PE committee member were together. They were getting engaged next month. After the congratulations, the focus shifted back to Jacob and me. So what about you two? Don't tell me you secretly went and got married already? Back in college, something was definitely off between you two. Bianca never cared that much about anyone else. She even handed him water during basketball. And now you're at the same company. Of course the one nearby gets the first chance. No way, there's nothing going on. Jacob's face flushed red. I'm still pursuing. Before he could finish, I cut him off. It's just a simple superior-subordinate relationship. Stop making a fuss. My boyfriend is younger, and he's jealous. The air fell silent in an instant. It was my roommates who broke the stillness first. Well, you're dating someone younger. Got any pictures? Let me see which handsome little brother managed to win over our Bianca the Great Beauty. I always thought you should date younger. You bottle everything up. What you need is a straightforward little wolf dog to stir you up. Exactly. You don't even know how many underclassmen asked me for your contact back then. If you'd been interested, you could have dated 7 or 8 already. Chapter 15. The topic shifted, and we chatted away warmly, leaving Jacob completely forgotten. When the group moved to another venue, most of them had already had a bit to drink. I didn't plan to join, so I sent Fernando my location. His reply came instantly. Got it. It was a little cold at night, and I pulled my coat tighter around me. I didn't know where Jacob had found hot water, but he hadn't left either. I looked up, thanked him, and didn't refuse. You're waiting for him. Jacob's tone was certain. When I didn't respond, he grew anxious. You never liked me that much, Bianca. I had no idea where his emotions came from, but truthfully, I had long wanted to talk to him about this. What counts as liking you? Abandoning my dignity and my future, that's the only thing you'd accept as proof? That I can't do. Jacob's voice grew hoarse. But you never once told me you liked me. I let out a cold laugh. Why did it have to be me to say it? You weren't sure whether we had mutual feelings. Then how was I supposed to be sure? After graduation, you became my boss, and I became your secretary by status. You held the advantage for me. As a subordinate, what would it mean to confess? I'd be gambling with my career. Jacob, what gives you the right to forbid me from being afraid? What gives you the right to demand I take risks for you? Jacob, don't be so childish. Keep personal feelings and work separate. Isn't that what you've always done? Chapter 16. By the time Fernando came to pick me up, the hot water had already gone cold. I threw the cup away. As soon as I got into the car, he shoved a heating pad into my hands. I looked at Fernando's profile as he drove. I kept staring until his face turned completely red. Frustrated, he pulled the car over to the side of the road. He covered my eyes with his palm, pressed his forehead against the side of my neck, and spoke in a defeated tone. Don't look at me like that. I curved my lips mischievously. What's wrong? Does it distract you? No, it makes me want to kiss you, pin you against the car and kiss you until every trace of someone else's scent on you is gone. Now it was my turn to blush. Even after all this time, I still couldn't handle Fernando's straightforwardness. All I could do was mutter, "Why are you like a puppy, clingy and always acting spoiled?" Unexpectedly, Fernando focused on the wrong part. What kind of dog? A golden retriever, the kind you like best? You really are. My heart softened. He rubbed against me until I felt warm all over. He even pulled out the childish side of me, like I was petting a dog. I touched his head, then behind his ears, his cheeks, and finally his chin. Looking at him, good boy. Red spread rapidly across Fernando's face. Even the corners of his eyes flushed. Almost shy, he guided my hand into his hoodie. My stomach. Cutie, you haven't patted my stomach yet. I sighed helplessly but obliged. Rubbing twice, it actually felt nice. Then I realized Fernando was a little too excited. He buried his head back into my arms, clearly bigger than me, yet like a clueless oversized dog. He kept squeezing himself into my embrace. I like you so much, cutie. Chapter 17. I don't know how things ended up like this. It had started with us just curled up on the sofa, watching Fernando's old videos. They were all extreme sports. In the most dangerous one, half his car was hanging over a cliff, teetering. I watched him crash while skiing, blood staining the white snow where he'd hit his collarbone. Yet he couldn't feel any pain, and he walked onto the stretcher himself. I couldn't take it, so I buried myself in his arms. Fernando held me, comforting me. I'm still alive, aren't I? I'm right here in front of you. Does it hurt? I asked him. Fernando raised a brow and tugged his collar down, revealing the scar on his collarbone. It's long healed. You can try biting it if you want. I glared at him, but somehow, I lowered my head and gave it the lightest kiss. Just as I was about to pull away, Fernando held my back down. His breathing was uneven, and he feigned pitifulness. It still hurts a little, cutie. Comfort me more. These days, we've been living almost like a couple, but at most, it was just head pats or resting his forehead on my stomach. Fernando, insensitive to pain, was strangely sensitive in this area. That way, he was easily stirred up many times, not to mention a kiss. But occasionally, giving a reward wasn't impossible. I licked my lips and asked meaningfully, "Is Woof Woof asleep?" Fernando's breathing grew heavier, answering me through action. My lips were crushed fiercely. I couldn't help but part them, and suddenly a scorching heat invaded. Lack of oxygen left me dizzy. Why are you so hot everywhere? Fernando was urgent, but also afraid of hurting me. He teased my emotions, coaxing me to relax. The night was deep, and Fernando used his actions to tell me he was completely recovered. Chapter 18. No wonder he's young. Once he's had a taste of meat, he can't go back to being satisfied with vegetables. Before, just a head pat was enough to make him happy. Now, when he talks about rewards, the meaning has completely changed. Jacob called me just after I'd nearly passed out from exhaustion. Fernando was helping me shower. I was dead tired. Yet when he told me to lift my arm, I lifted it. When he told me to lift my leg, I did. And that pervert, he got turned on again, more excited than ever. When I realized it, my sleepiness vanished. I splashed water at him angrily. You're no golden retriever, you're clearly a randy poodle in disguise. Knowing he was guilty, Fernando held back and carefully dried me, then helped me change into soft pajamas. Just when I thought he'd come to his senses, he suddenly knelt by the bed, a tie deliberately knotted around his neck. He handed the end to me. Punish your puppy, master. After so many nights of sharing a bed, I had some idea of what he liked to play. I pressed down with my foot. Fernando instantly let out a muffled groan. His spine arched, yet the tie forced his head back. His eyes were red, neck bared like he was offering it up for slaughter, wearing the expression of a willing sacrifice. If I didn't know he couldn't feel pain, that to him it was pure pleasure, I might have been fooled by his restrained appearance. But still, I couldn't resist leaning down to kiss him. That's when Jacob's call came through. A wicked thought struck me. I looked at Fernando and gestured for silence. Then I answered. Jacob's side was noisy, like he was drinking, his voice sticky. Bianca, can you come pick me up? My stomach hurts so much. Bianca. In the end, all he did was keep repeating my name. I had the call on speaker. I didn't say anything, just forwarded the address he sent to his driver. I was about to hang up when I felt Fernando's hand growing restless. No wonder he'd only brought me a nightdress earlier. So this was his plan. I couldn't hold back a soft moan. Jacob heard it too, and suddenly his pitiful tone turned sharp. What are you doing? Who are you with? I had no patience for him. I ground down on Fernando twice, leaving one last remark. Comforting your brother. Then I hung up the call, fully focused on disciplining my disobedient puppy. We agreed I'd play with him. Who allowed him to turn the tables and play with me? Chapter 19. I hadn't expected to introduce Fernando to my parents so suddenly. Without warning, we had just finished walking the dog. When I opened the door, a table full of dishes awaited. My mom and Jacob chatting happily. After Jacob barged in last time, I'd changed the passcode. For him to be inside now, it was clear my mom had let him in. I sighed. I hadn't told her about the fallout between me and Jacob. She probably still thought our relationship was like it had been back in college. Jacob looked much more haggard. I'd heard that last time he drank until his stomach bled and ended up hospitalized. When he saw me, his eyes lit up for a moment. Then they dropped to my tightly clasped hand with Fernando's. And he explained dejectedly, I came to see you. Didn't expect your mom would be here. I didn't mean to intrude. What he felt aggrieved about, I had no idea. I wanted to roll my eyes, but I didn't say anything in front of my mom. Instead, I led Fernando forward and introduced him. Mom, this is my boyfriend, Fernando. Fernando bowed nervously, a full 90 degrees. Auntie. Hello. But my mom bypassed him, pinching my face instead. You've lost weight. Nonsense. Just recently, Lily had said I looked rounder, glowing from happiness. Her words only meant one thing. She wasn't very satisfied with Fernando. Fernando looked like he was facing an enemy, his face pale. My heart ached a little. I squeezed his hand, telling him not to be so nervous. But as soon as we sat down, my mom hit him with a second blow. Chapter 20. My mom arranged for Jacob and me to sit together, leaving Fernando across from us. I held back and didn't say anything. If I interfered at that moment, it would only make my mom look down on Fernando even more. I had the habit of drinking a bowl of soup before eating. But today, when I glanced at the soup, it was loaded with enough scallions to kill me. I began to wonder if my mom had some secret daughter out there. How else could she forget that I hated scallions? Fernando was the first to serve himself a bowl of soup. He glanced at my mom hesitantly. Then, as if resigned to his fate, he began painstakingly picking out every scallion piece. Picky eating in front of elders, definitely a huge demerit. Sure enough, Jacob assumed the role of the elder brother. Fernando, you're already grown and still being picky? No manners at all. Then he placed a bowl of soup in front of me, speaking softly, warm your stomach first. Just then, Fernando finished picking his. He glanced at the bowl and said in a surprised tone, Brother, Don't tell me you don't know Cutie doesn't eat scallions? His expression was innocent, but I clearly saw the mischief glinting in his eyes. And right then, my mom placed a rib into his bowl. Fernando, what does your family do for a living? It was an obvious signal of acceptance. Fernando's back immediately straightened. He was practically eager to report 8 generations of his ancestors. I sipped the soup slowly, finally recovering from the scallion ordeal. It seemed Fernando had passed my mom's test. Chapter 21. Once the bedroom door closed, Fernando buried himself in my arms, whining pitifully. I rubbed his ear gently. It reminded me of what my mom had just whispered to me. Bianca, Fernando seems like a good boy, but with all those piercings on his face, he didn't get mixed up in gangs before, did he? Mystery solved. That's why she had disapproved of him at first. I repeatedly assured her Fernando had never been in trouble, and only then was she relieved. Still, I was curious about one thing. I cupped Fernando's face, examining his lips carefully. He hadn't worn his lip piercing in months. Only a small hole remained. I couldn't help asking the sole question. Does water leak when you drink? Fernando's expression went blank. Want to try? Driven by some odd curiosity, we kissed. Slowly, the kiss changed flavor. Seeing Fernando wanted to go further, my rationality returned. I caught my breath and pressed him down. My mom's still here. Go handle it yourself. Fernando buried his head in my arms, steadied himself, then stood. I thought he really was going to deal with it himself and exhaled in relief. But then, I saw him start to take off his clothes. Not this time. Cutie, I just got mom's approval. I feel so insecure. I raised a brow. So? Finally revealing his hand, Fernando blinked his innocent deer-like eyes. You still owe me a wish. The next morning, the very first thing I did was kick Fernando out of bed. Chapter Extra 1. My name is Fernando, and I was a monster from the very beginning. When I was born, I didn't cry, even when the nurse smacked my bottom until it was swollen. I felt nothing. Later, I was diagnosed with congenital insensitivity to pain. As a child, I was often injured, and my parents treated me like fragile glass. I think, back then, they still loved me, but once they realized I never smiled at them, never called them mom or dad, everything changed. I was diagnosed again, this time with emotional deficiency. From then on, I had a new name, Monster. No one my age wanted to play with me. My parents treated me like a stain, ignoring and neglecting me. When I was 10, I was kidnapped, covered in blood. I returned home while they were celebrating Jacob's birthday. Not a single person noticed I was missing. I didn't feel sad, just hungry. I helped myself to a slice of cake. My mother screamed and fainted. From that moment on, I saw fear in their eyes whenever they looked at me. They poured all their affection into Jacob. They raised me until I was an adult, then eagerly exiled me abroad. There, I was finally free to live my true nature. I fell in love with extreme sports. Only in those life and death moments did I feel truly alive. I hadn't planned to return overseas. I had money, friends, and a career, but maybe even extreme sports eventually bored me. I thought, why not change the scenery, return home, and give that happy family a scare? That's when I found my greatest surprise. Chapter Extra 2. The first time I saw Bianca wasn't at the company. It was after she'd worked overtime, her eyes red with exhaustion. She exchanged a few polite words. Then my brother took them seriously and drove off, leaving her alone. That's when she leaned against a railing and slowly crouched down. It looked like a stomachache. She seemed fragile, but even with a pale face, she calmly took medicine from her bag and swallowed it. Cool and composed. For the first time, I felt my heartbeat so clearly, almost against my will. I butted in and handed her a bottle of water. The smile on my face, if I'd looked in the mirror, even I would have thought it disgusting. Cutie, are you okay? She was wary. She didn't take the water. She shook her head and drove away. But I went mad. That night, all I could think about were her red-rimmed eyes. I was unreasonably excited. So few things in this world stir my emotions, and I treasure each one. The next day, I traded a project with Jacob, joined the company, and became Bianca's assistant. Chapter Extra 3. At first, I was only playing around. I thought I liked her fragile appearance, that I just wanted to watch a show. But in the end, I was the one who fell in. One compliment from her made me happy beyond measure. One touch from her was worth more than parachuting. Seeing her eat what I gave her filled me with satisfaction. Seeing her upset made my chest ache. Pathetic. I had always lived freely, caring for little, rarely wanting anything, but during that time, all I wanted was her eyes on me and me alone. So once again, I took a project to Jacob. The profits from the port needed no explanation. Whether the project later turned toxic wasn't something he needed to know. Sure enough, Jacob only hesitated a little before agreeing to say those words. He had received too much love, too much confidence. But I could see it. Cutie's affection for him was like a candle about to burn out, one splash of cold water away from extinguishing. What I didn't expect was for her to cry. Facing the sea breeze, she cried silently. I was usually good at sweet talk, good at coaxing her smile, but at that moment, I was helpless. It felt like that missing pain had returned to my body, and I found a little meaning in life. I realized I was born to make Bianca happy. She will never know. If it hadn't been for the words she said to me back then, I might have chosen to let go. Chapter Extra 4. Much later, some old friends from my mountain racing days called to invite me, but I was in the warmth of love. I lowered my head, kissed the top of Cutie's hair. No, I'm afraid of dying. I hung up the phone and snuggled into her arms. She didn't even open her eyes, just instinctively rubbed my hair. I closed my eyes in comfort. I had already found the resting place for my soul, the safest harbor I never wanted to leave. So I will live well, stay by Bianca's side, and live well. Story 2. Chapter 1. Congratulations. You're 6 weeks pregnant. When I received the call from the hospital, I couldn't hold back the tears of joy. 8 years of trying to conceive, countless failures. I thought I'd never have the chance to experience the joy of having a child, the result of our love. But now, just before our 8th wedding anniversary, I have received such amazing news. I couldn't wait to tell Paul. I tried calling him several times, but he didn't answer. Suppressing my excitement, I decided to continue selecting furniture for our new home. We had bought a villa a year ago, finished renovating it 2 months ago, and now all that was left was the interior decorating. After choosing most of the furniture, I suddenly remembered that I'd left the keys to the storage room of our old house at the new home. So I drove over to pick them up. As soon as I opened the door, a pair of hot pink high heels caught my eye. I froze. They were clearly not my shoes. Countless thoughts flooded my mind, but I forced myself to stay calm and followed the sound of voices upstairs. Paul, I've never forgotten you all these years. The woman's voice was soft and unfamiliar. Then why did you leave? If you hadn't gone, I wouldn't have had to marry Lisa. That was Paul's voice. Do you know how I've endured all these years? Now, every time I look at her face, I feel sick. As soon as I transfer all the assets, I'll divorce her. Then, we'll never have to be apart again. Hearing those words, I stood frozen in place. I never imagined that the man I'd shared a bed with for 8 years could be plotting against me like this. Just 2 days ago, he held me in his arms, promising to always be good to me and love me forever. In that moment, my heart broke. The pain so intense I could barely breathe. I took a deep breath and crept closer. Through the slightly open door, I could clearly see what was happening inside. Paul was holding a woman tightly in his arms, their clothes scattered across the floor. When I recognized the woman's face, my body went rigid. It was Zoe, Paul's first love. Years ago, she had left him to go abroad, and now she had returned. My thoughts came crashing back as I saw Zoe kiss him. Overcome with desire, the two of them fell onto the bed. I couldn't describe how I felt as I watched them, as if I was torturing myself by witnessing their intimacy. It wasn't until I heard Paul repeatedly say "I love you" to Zoe that I finally accepted the truth. Everything he had done for me was an act. Slowly regaining my composure, I pushed down the emotions welling up inside me, took out my phone, and secretly recorded a video of their entanglement. I also took a few photos where their faces were clearly visible. After I finished, I left the villa in a daze. I drove aimlessly, my mind consumed by memories of the years Paul and I had spent together. When I started university, I met Paul, the boy I had secretly admired since my younger years. It was love at first sight. After silently harboring my feelings for a year, I found out that Paul was dating Zoe. I had no choice but to bury my emotions deep inside. It wasn't until the year we graduated that I heard from others that Paul and Zoe had broken up. I thought my chance had finally come. I pursued Paul relentlessly, staying by his side. I used all my connections and resources to help him achieve his life goals. And together, we started a company. Later, Paul proposed to me. I thought he had finally been moved by my dedication and had fallen in love with me. We quickly got married, and our life together was perfect. Or so it seemed. In just 3 years, I helped him grow the company to the point of going public. Paul told me I had worked hard all those years and suggested I stay home to rest. I went along with it, becoming the perfect supportive wife. But I never imagined that his kindness was part of his plan, a step in his scheme to transfer our joint assets. I pulled over to the side of the road, feeling utterly lost. Nearly 8 years of marriage, and all of Paul's promises had turned into lies. And to think, I was about to tell him about the pregnancy as a surprise. How foolish I was. Just then, my phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was my former assistant from the company. When I answered, her tone was urgent. "Sis, why did you sell your shares? The company's going through a restructuring and acquisition. The stock price is going to soar. And if you sell now, you'll lose a lot." I was stunned. What? I never said I was selling. Boss Paul said so at the board meeting. She whispered. I just thought something seemed off. "Sis, you should be careful." With that, she quickly hung up. As her words sunk in, I immediately understood. Paul was already starting to move assets, and he was trying to swallow my share too. He really was a master manipulator, leaving no room for decency. I slammed my foot on the gas and sped home. This husband of mine, I couldn't keep him any longer. But the baby. I gently touched my belly. It had been so difficult for me to get pregnant. If I lost this child, I might never have another chance. By the time I got home, I had made up my mind. I would keep the baby, and I would take back every bit of what was rightfully mine. As for Paul, that scumbag, he would learn what it felt like to be betrayed. Chapter 2. Looking at the wedding photo in the living room, all I could feel was disgust at Paul's bright smile. It seemed so fake. Without thinking, I grabbed a nearby ornament and hurled it at the photo. Maybe it was the early stage of pregnancy, but I quickly became drowsy and lay down on the bed. Before long, I fell asleep. In the middle of the night, I was woken up by the sound of Paul coming home. As I opened my eyes, I saw him leaning in to kiss me. The thought of those lips having kissed another woman made me feel utterly disgusted. Just thinking about it made me nauseous, and I leaned over the bed, gagging. Paul didn't expect such a strong reaction from me and quickly grabbed some water from the nearby table. "What's wrong? Is it your stomach acting up again?" Back when we first got together, I had worked endlessly to help Paul ease his burden, working day and night to find clients and manage business. That led to my stomach issues. I was surprised he still remembered. In a way, it was a relief. At least I didn't have to worry about revealing my pregnancy and getting caught up in a complicated situation. "I'm fine, honey. I was just a bit tired today and didn't have time to eat, so my stomach is hurting a little." I hid my disgust and lay back down, pretending nothing was wrong. "As long as you're okay. You haven't eaten yet, right? I'll make you some porridge. Lie down and rest, and I'll call you when it's ready." Paul stroked my hair gently before heading to the kitchen. I forced a smile at Paul, but as soon as he left, my smile faded. I could hear the clanging of pots and pans from the kitchen. Paul was making porridge. I lay in bed, my thoughts drifting far away. I didn't even notice when Paul came back into the room. "The porridge is ready." I nodded and followed him to the dining table. On the table was a bowl of millet porridge, along with a small plate of pickles. "Honey, I remember the villa is fully renovated now, right? Why don't we move in a few days? Maybe a change of environment will help us with our baby plans." Paul froze for a moment, clearly caught off guard by my sudden mention of the villa. He looked visibly flustered but quickly regained his composure. "Yeah, it's ready. But there's a bit of an issue. We might need to wait a little longer. I sneered inwardly. An issue? More like he's afraid I'll discover something. Did the workers cut corners? I'll go check tomorrow. You're busy with work, so you don't have to go back and forth. I had to suppress my disgust and act like a loving wife to keep Paul from getting suspicious. Your health isn't great. You don't need to worry about such trivial things. Don't you trust your husband? Paul held my hand, putting on an act as if he was really looking out for me. If I hadn't seen him and Zoe together with my own eyes, his words might have moved me. Since that's the case, I'll leave it to you. I'm really looking forward to the day we can move in. With that, the conversation ended. I didn't want to talk to Paul anymore, so I quietly focused on eating the porridge. After finishing the bowl of hot porridge, my stomach felt much better. Seeing that I had finished, Paul voluntarily took on the task of washing the dishes, while I returned to the bedroom. After a while, Paul lay down beside me. He turned over and wrapped his arms around me, his hands wandering inappropriately over my body. A wave of disgust surged through me, and I instinctively slapped his hand away. The sharp sound of the slap echoed loudly in the quiet night. My reaction was sudden, and Paul seemed caught off guard. Lisa? I forcefully pulled away from his embrace, my face full of contempt in the darkness. I don't feel well. Let's just go to sleep early. Paul didn't say anything for a moment, and after a while, I sensed him lying down next to me. The next morning, Paul got up early, but this time, I didn't prepare a lavish breakfast for him like I used to. Instead, I slept in until late morning. After getting enough rest, I felt much better. After all, I had something far more important to take care of today. I placed an order for a private investigator using my phone and arranged to meet at a cafe. Half an hour later, I sat face to face with the private investigator, both of us in silence. Finally, I broke the awkward tension. Are you the private investigator I hired? I looked him over, then asked, have you graduated yet? It wasn't that I didn't trust him, but he seemed so young. Don't worry, we're all professionals. Hearing that, my worries dissipated. I pulled out the photos of Paul and Zoe from my bag. Since I had made up my mind, I realized that a lot of things had already been telling me the truth all along. Like this photograph, Paul had kept it in perfect condition all this time. When we first got married, I had seen this photo in the study. I still remember how Paul had explained it to me back then. When I found the photo, Paul had been frantic, explaining that they were just friends. He even promised to get rid of it, but now I knew it was all lies. Looking back, I felt foolish for believing him, but at least now, there was still time to make things right. I steadied my thoughts and pointed to the photo on the table. He's my husband, and he's cheating on me. I need you to follow them. Tell me when they meet and what they do, in full detail. I need evidence to prove his infidelity. Do you understand? The investigator nodded. I was pleased with his professionalism. He didn't pry or ask unnecessary questions. I also want to know how they reconnected. Money isn't an issue. If there's any problem, contact me immediately. We exchanged contact information, and I left the cafe with a renewed sense of determination to avoid being discovered by Paul. I purposely bought a new phone just for contacting Diego. For the next few days, everything seemed calm. Paul remained busy with work as usual, and the rest of his time was spent meeting with Zoe in secret. There was no news from Diego's side either, and just when I couldn't contain my impatience anymore, I received a message from him. I read the report carefully, and I had to admit, Diego was quite skilled at his job. What shocked me, though, was that Paul had reconnected with Zoe 2 years ago. Not only that, but it was around the same time that Paul had started asking me to step back from the company. Most people in the company were now Paul's loyal followers. The report also mentioned that Paul was planning to buy out my shares and give them to Zoe. As I read that line, a bitter laugh escaped my lips, and before I knew it, tears were streaming down my face. Look at that, this is the man I've loved for so many years. Sis, I've got some photos I need to give you. When would you be available to meet? Send me the address. I wiped away my tears. If Paul wants to be ruthless, then I won't hold back either. Half an hour later, I arrived at the location Diego had sent me. This time, Diego was dressed much more discreetly. If it hadn't been for the fact that he was wearing the same outfit as when we met last time, I might not have recognized him. We sat across from each other, and he placed a stack of photos in front of me. I stared at them for a long time before finally picking them up. It only took a few pictures to make my breathing quicken. The photos were all of Paul and Zoe together. Hotels, restaurants, and even banquets I hadn't known about, all of them featured Zoe by Paul's side. The further I looked, the more alarmed I became. The last few photos were even more familiar. The background was the villa in the east of the city, the one Paul had recently claimed had renovation issues. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, then grabbed my phone and transferred the payment to Diego. It was his hard-earned fee. Keep watching them. Let me know when there's more news. After Diego left, I finally let my hands rest on the table. Had Diego still been there, he would have noticed that my hands were trembling slightly. Paul and Zoe, what a pair! Wait and see. I won't let the two of you have your way. Chapter 3. I'm Zoe. A friend request caught my attention. I stared at the notification on my phone for a while, hesitating, but eventually, I accepted the request. However, the other party didn't say anything. 3 days from now, it will be my birthday. When Paul and I first got together, I rarely received any gifts from him. At that time, our business was just starting to take off, and we couldn't afford anything expensive. Paul had promised me that once the business was successful, he would make it up to me. I pitied Paul for how hard he worked, so I never asked for anything. But this time, I'm determined to make Paul splurge on me. After all, everything he spends is part of our marital assets, and if I don't spend it, he'll give it to another woman. When Paul came home, I brought it up. Honey, my birthday is coming up. Have you thought about what you're going to get me? Paul's body stiffened when he heard my words. Of course I've thought about it. Didn't you mention that you wanted the new handbag from X Store? I've already ordered it. I was planning to surprise you. I was a little surprised. X Store is a luxury brand, and just one bag costs over $1 million. But this kind of money is nothing to Paul anymore. Feigning excitement, I said, "You're so sweet. Honey, I'll be looking forward to it. Oh, and I've been resting for so long. How about I go back to the company and help you out? There's so much going on at the company, and I've noticed you've lost weight recently." It disgusted me to play this false role, but it was the only way to keep Paul from getting suspicious. No need. Honey, you went through tough times with me before, and now that life is good. You just need to enjoy it at home, Paul said, holding my hand with that fake look of concern. Seeing him like this made me feel utterly repulsed. Smiling, I pulled my hand away and jokingly asked, "What? Are you afraid I'll discover you've got a mistress at the company?" Right after I asked, Paul's expression froze. I was taken aback. No way. I only said it in jest, but could it be true? If that's really the case, why hasn't Diego uncovered anything? Paul forced a smile. How could that be? I'm just worried about you getting too tired. Your position is still vacant, and if you want, you can come back to the company anytime. I was surprised at how quickly he agreed. Since that's the case, there's no need to waste any more words. The next morning, I left the house with Paul. He was clearly surprised when he realized I was actually going to the company with him. Maybe he thought I had just been joking the night before and didn't expect me to be serious about it. Are you really going to the office? Paul asked as we stood together in the elevator. After a long silence, he finally spoke up. I smiled slightly, amused that he couldn't hide his discomfort so quickly. In the elevator, I casually took his arm, pretending not to notice how tense he had become. When the elevator doors opened, I stepped out ahead of him. The receptionist looked surprised to see me and greeted me warmly. "Lisa, it's been a while. What brings you here?" When I had left the company, Paul had made some sort of arrangement with the staff, though I wasn't exactly sure what story he had told them. "I'm back to work," I said with a smile before heading toward my old office. Though I hadn't been to the company in quite some time, my office remained just as it had been. That pleased me. Returning to the company was the first step in my plan. This company's success today was largely built on my hard work. Paul had merely reaped the rewards of my efforts. When it came to business, I had always been more talented than him. On my first day back, I could already sense the undercurrents of tension within the company. I had to admit, Paul was quite skilled at winning people over. In the year I had been away, he had managed to sway many of the company's senior employees to his side. Recently, the company had been preparing for a major bidding project, and as far as I knew, Paul was still clueless about how to approach it. This project was my opportunity, no matter how much Paul had promised his followers. Everything depended on the company's future development, and I was confident that I could do better than him. Over the following days, I threw myself into the bidding project, working harder than ever. I became so busy that, some nights, I returned home after Paul had already fallen asleep, and in the mornings, I left before he even woke up. I led a team of new employees on the project, promising them generous bonuses. After a month of hard work, the project was finally beginning to take shape. The support for me within the company grew stronger with each passing day, and I knew that Paul was starting to get nervous. Chapter 4. In just over a month, I secured the bidding project, bringing significant profits to the company. I made sure to reward my colleagues who worked with me on the project, giving them a generous bonus. The total amount reached millions, but considering the revenue the project generated for the company, this bonus was nothing in comparison. When Paul found out that I had given out such large bonuses, he was displeased, although he only hinted at his dissatisfaction through subtle comments. After that, it was time for my birthday. On the morning of my birthday, Paul made me a bowl of longevity noodles. Happy birthday, honey. I've booked us a candlelit dinner tonight to celebrate. I'll come pick you up after work, Paul said, holding me in his arms. I didn't resist. I need to go to the hospital today, so I won't be going to the office, I said softly, my voice muffled as I remained in his embrace. Without any hesitation or sentiment, I gently pushed Paul away, smiling as I saw him out the door. I had plans to meet Diego today, and I also needed to go to the hospital for a prenatal checkup. The baby inside me was now almost 4 months along. At home, I had been careful not to wear any tight-fitting clothes, but if anyone looked closely, they would start to notice that I was beginning to show. It seemed I needed to speed things up. At the appointed time, I arrived at the cafe. I had been so busy with work that I had kept in touch with Diego primarily through WeChat. He mentioned that he had found some additional information. I spotted Diego entering the cafe with his bag, and he sat down across from me, his face beaming with excitement. Sis, I guarantee the latest information I've found will be of great use to you. With that, Diego placed a file in front of me. The title was striking, Asset Transfer. What was Paul planning? As I continued reading, my shock grew. I quickly gathered the papers and tucked them into my bag. Thank you. Keep watching them, I said as I left, not forgetting to transfer Diego his payment. As I left the cafe, I felt overwhelmed. Paul was planning to transfer all his assets. What could his motive be? Just as I was deep in thought, my phone buzzed again. There was no message, only a video from Diego. I opened it to find a man and a woman engaged in something explicit. The two people were Paul and Zoe. Just one glance was enough to make my stomach churn with disgust. I quickly saved the video. This would serve as evidence for my case against Paul. Not wanting to dwell on these unsettling matters, I hailed a taxi and headed to the hospital. Before leaving home, I had already messaged a friend to schedule my prenatal appointment. When I arrived at the hospital, I barely had to wait before being called in for my checkup. Alice, my friend from high school, was the one handling my appointment. Despite the many years since we graduated, we had always kept in touch. Congratulations are in order. From the scans, it looks like the baby is very healthy. Just remember to come in regularly for your checkups, Alice said warmly. I nodded, gently placing my hand on my belly, smiling with affection. We exchanged a few words of small talk before I left, knowing she had other patients waiting. After returning home, I rested for a while. During that time, I received a message from Paul. He informed me that he'd be working late and asked me to go to the restaurant by myself. That evening, I waited alone at the restaurant for a long time. My calls to Paul went unanswered. The waiter came by multiple times, asking if I was ready to order, but each time I still couldn't reach Paul. Finally, I ended the call, apologized to the waiter, and left the restaurant. As soon as I checked WeChat, the first thing I saw was Zoe's post in her Moments. It was a blurry photo accompanied by a vague caption. I told him it was just a little scratch. No need for the hospital, but he insisted on taking me and staying with me until now. The background of the photo was clearly a hospital, and in the corner, there was a familiar figure. It was Paul, still wearing the same clothes from this morning. No wonder he wasn't answering my calls or messages. He was at the hospital with his precious first love. But surprisingly, I didn't feel anything. If it hadn't been for the need to keep up appearances with Paul, I wouldn't have agreed to have dinner with him in the first place. I didn't turn on the lights when I got home. Instead, I sat in the dim living room, waiting. As the night wore on, Paul never messaged me. I knew Zoe's post was aimed at me. She wanted me to see it. I opened the post again and left a comment beneath it. Congrats! But doesn't the man in your photo look a lot like my husband? After sending the comment, I tossed my phone aside. I knew Paul would see it. All I had to do now was wait for him to come home. Sure enough, half an hour later, Paul walked through the door. He still had a faint scent of perfume on him, the same scent Zoe always wore. The first thing Paul did when he came in was confront me, as if I had done something unforgivable. What's the meaning of what you posted under Zoe's Moments? I know forgetting your birthday was my mistake, but why are you taking it all out on her? Paul kept saying Zoe's name, over and over, as if they were the ones who truly belonged together. So, she really was talking about you. I just thought the figure looked familiar, I said, feigning surprise. My expression was so genuine that it would be hard to doubt me. Paul stared at me for a moment, and finally, his tone softened. I'm sorry. Honey, I didn't mean to forget your birthday. You know Zoe just got back to the country and doesn't have many friends. Of course. I know. I replied with the same smile on my face. But I had no desire to continue this conversation with Paul any further. In the past few weeks at the company, I have done a lot. Now, it was time to tie up all the loose ends. I've made plans with Alice. We agreed to meet after her shift. So I'm going to the hospital to see her. I lied smoothly. Paul didn't suspect a thing and even offered to drive me there. I politely declined his offer and left the house quickly. The truth was, I hadn't made any plans with Alice. I just couldn't bear to stay in that suffocating house any longer. Instead, I booked a room at a hotel far from home. During the day, I continued going to the company as usual. And at night, I found various excuses not to return home. I had someone draft up a property transfer agreement, tricking Paul into signing it by telling him it was related to insurance. Now, everything was in place. While Paul was at work, I moved all my belongings out of the house. I found the deed to the villa and immediately put it up for sale. The villa had been bought for around 8 million yuan, and to ensure a quick sale, I lowered the asking price. In just 3 days, it was sold. However, I negotiated with the buyer to hand over the keys in a month. A month was all I needed to finalize everything. Chapter 5. I gathered all the videos of Paul and Zoe together, along with various incriminating photos. Everything was meticulously organized. I informed Diego that there was no need to continue keeping an eye on them. After transferring the final payment, Diego's job was done. The rest of this was now my responsibility. Last night, Paul told me he would be going on a business trip to a nearby city for a few days. I took full advantage of his absence to clean house at the company, removing all of Paul's loyalists from their positions. Despite their dissatisfaction, there was nothing they could do. Once I laid out the evidence of their corruption and bribery, they had no choice but to slink away in defeat. Within just 3 days, the company underwent a complete overhaul. Now, everyone left was loyal to me, and Paul, even though he technically owned the company, was nothing more than a figurehead. All that remained was for Paul to return. Zoe, who had been lingering in my thoughts for so long, was finally someone I decided to deal with directly. This was the first time I arranged to meet her. It was time to wrap things up. I laid out all the evidence of Paul's infidelity in front of her, including the more intimate photos she had taken with him. Zoe's expression changed dramatically as she saw the evidence, and I couldn't help but feel satisfied with the result. All the money spent was worth it. I'll give you a month to return all the money Paul has spent on you. As for the villa you're living in, It's already been sold. Someone will be coming to collect the keys in a few days. So you've got a little time to find yourself a new place. Zoe looked at me, shocked. She had assumed that I was a meek, harmless woman with no fight in me. That was the reason she had flaunted their relationship so boldly in her moments, making sure only I could see her posts. Does Paul know about any of this? Zoe asked, trying to keep her composure, but the tremble in her hands betrayed her fear. He'll find out soon enough, I replied coldly, standing up to leave without hesitation. There wasn't much time left for me. Zoe would run straight to Paul with this information. But it didn't matter. I had already booked my plane ticket long ago. After parting ways with Zoe, I headed straight to the airport. Over the past few weeks, I had gradually shipped away all my belongings. I had no sentimental attachment to anything, and what wasn't necessary had already been thrown away. 3 hours later, the plane landed. My phone was flooded with missed calls and messages, all from Paul. As soon as I turned on my phone, Paul's call came through. I smirked before answering. Honey, where did you go? Let me explain the situation with Zoe. It's not what you think, Paul began to babble. I cut him off. Paul, let's get a divorce. I've already filed the papers with the court, so you'll receive the divorce agreement soon. If you're smart, you'll sign it quickly. Dragging this out won't benefit you. Oh, by the way, did you receive the little surprise I left for you? You really make me sick, I added. There was sudden silence on the other end of the line. After a long pause, Paul's voice came back, hoarse and broken. You knew all along, didn't you? I didn't bother to answer directly. Paul, every single day with you has disgusted me. Before he could reply, I hung up. Chapter 6. A month later, I finally received the divorce agreement. During that time, Paul constantly tried to win my forgiveness, but it was far too late. By the time I left, I had already taken care of everything with the company. Paul was left with nothing. He didn't even have a place to live. Perhaps my firm stance wore him down in the end, and he eventually agreed to the divorce. Since he was found guilty of infidelity during the marriage, the court ruled that Paul had to leave the marriage with nothing. As for Zoe, she had to mortgage the house and sell the luxury goods Paul had bought her just to pay back what she owed. Once the divorce was finalized, I cut all ties with both of them, deleting and blocking their contact information from my life. With everything settled, I could finally focus on what mattered, preparing for the arrival of my baby. Being a first-time mother, I worried about doing things right, so I spared no expense in hiring a top-notch maternity nurse to care for me and the baby after birth. 5 months later, I gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. To this day, Paul remains oblivious to the fact that I was pregnant. I never intended to tell him anyway. This child is mine, and Paul is nothing more than a fleeting chapter in my life. After my daughter was weaned, I opened a branch of my company here. I hired a maternity nurse to take care of my daughter while I balanced running the business. At times, I would go days, even weeks, without seeing her, but fortunately, the business grew stable, and I found trustworthy people to manage it. I gradually began to let go and spent more and more time at home with my daughter. 3 years later, I finally returned home. It was the first time I'd been back in years. I left the company in the hands of trustworthy people. This trip back home was primarily for business, but I never expected that on my first day back, I'd run into Paul. I hadn't seen him in years. He looked gaunt and much more disheveled than before. His eyes lit up when he saw me, but then his gaze fell on the little girl in my arms. Is that your daughter? Paul asked, his voice filled with curiosity. I tensed up immediately. If you looked closely, you could see traces of Paul in my daughter's features, worried that he might notice. I spoke quickly to my daughter. Sweetheart, say goodbye to the uncle. We need to go. Goodbye, uncle, my daughter said sweetly in her soft, childlike voice. I hurried past Paul, carrying my daughter with me, my heart pounding as I feared he might follow us. This time, I only stayed for 3 days to take care of business matters. Once everything was settled, I took my daughter and headed home. On the way back, I received more messages from Paul. They were full of regret, but I didn't bother reading them in detail. I simply blocked him, not wanting to waste another second of my life on him. With my daughter in my arms, we boarded our flight. At the gate, I ran into someone familiar, Diego. Hey, sis. Long time no see. I didn't expect to bump into you here, he said with a smile. Chapter 7. On the plane. Diego kept my daughter entertained, and she seemed to enjoy playing with him. After we landed, I suggested we grab a meal together, and Diego happily accepted. Seeing I had a lot of luggage, he offered to carry my daughter, who surprisingly didn't mind at all. We ate together, and after dinner, Diego said goodbye and went on his way. But after that, I started running into Diego more often, in all sorts of places. At first, I thought it was just a coincidence, but over time, I began to suspect that Diego had other intentions. It wasn't until one night, after I had too much to drink, that one of my colleagues called Diego to help me. In my hazy state, I could have sworn I heard Diego confess his feelings. The next day, however, Diego acted as if nothing had happened, and I didn't bring it up either. I didn't want to break that unspoken understanding between us. Having been through a failed marriage, I now knew one thing for certain: the only person I could truly trust was myself. And with that knowledge, I was confident that my future would be bright, and that I would forge a path to success.